That's right. We are live. Welcome to the bottom of the rabbit hole. I know in our last live, they talked about the space that they created for the Matrix 4 writers being called the pit. Well, the space that we've created for the hardest of core Matrix fans is the bottom of the rabbit hole. And we are here right now. So, we've got our resident Matrix Online advisor Vesuvius with us. Say hello to the students.
Greetings, Red Pills. We are back.
And it's perfect because what we're talking about tonight is right up your alley. We're going to be talking about the developer Rarebit in the Matrix Online. An article came out. Was that yesterday?
I think it was yesterday, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Eurogamer.
Yeah, they're all running together. But yeah, article came out, and I thought we should. Well, I thought there'd be no one better to talk about this with than you. I mean, other than I guess Rarebit himself, right? But yeah, I thought this was, this would have been something that would have, I guess, 6 months ago been a video. But you guys seem to really like the live streams. I like interacting with you, so here we are. I'm trying to think if there's really anything to lead in, or if we should just go straight into the article. Was there anything that you wanted to, I guess, say in prep before we dive into what they were talking about here?
I don't think so. I was talking about the canon last week. I posted like a breakdown. So I mean, this kind of leads in, or I should say, that kind of leads into this.
All right, so let's check it out. Well, we got one question here, real quick. Uh, I see Matrix Spider-Man in the house. Shout out to you. You are here. Hello. But this here says, so any news on the lobby for turning the MXO back on? So for anybody who doesn't know, we started a petition. Has it been a whole year? It was a while
I
ago.
don't, I don't think so. I don't think it's been a full year, but it's been around for a little while here.
It's definitely been a few months. We started a petition on change.org. There's definitely, links on our Twitter pages and stuff. But yeah, we were trying to get some signatures, kind of draw and drum up some attention to resurrecting the Matrix Online. Um, so yeah, so as far as I know, I haven't seen any reaching out. I think once you hit a certain target number, they contact like I listed Warner as a contact in terms of what we wanted to change. So on the back end, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but yeah, we don't have any new developments. But if you do see the link, or you can go to Twitter and share the link and try to get that going and pass that around, get the word out there. The emulator is still going, but we'd all love to actually be able to play the game, or even play a new game. But the idea is just to put it out into the ether and just get the word out that we want some Matrix gaming action for everyone. Shout out to everybody who's in here joining us tonight. So let's go ahead and get into this article here. See if I can share my screen. No, add to stream. All right, is that up? Can you see it? Yeah.
I can see it.
All right, so it's titled "The One Meeting the Solo Developer Who Took the Matrix Online to the End," and as you mentioned, Vesuvius, it was put out by Eurogamer.net. Um, so I guess he was able to get an interview with Rarebit. Um, he says, I was taken aback watching the Matrix 4 trailer earlier this month because it's been years since anything Matrix was exciting, and I'd forgotten how much it means to me. I really love that film. I am pretending there is only one, of course. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing Keanu as Neo again sent shivers down my spine. And that moment where he and Carrie Ann Moss meet in the trailer, ooh. But where was Lawrence Fishburne? Where was Morpheus? Or was that Morpheus? No one seemed to be sure. though it didn't take long for actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II to clarify that he is Morpheus in the new film. For some reason, Fishburne wasn't invited to the reunion, but let's not dwell on that, because for one moment, amid all the speculation, something brilliant happened. People reached for an explanation from a game, and it was a game we hadn't heard about for years, The Matrix Online. So I just want to stop here, because as all this is happening, you know, yeah, knock knock. As all this is happening, I want to go back to the original Matrix 4 podcast. When did you put that up?
I think we started recording it around this time 2 years ago, and I started putting it out at October, and that's where we went through the entire Matrix Online storyline. And it was mostly, I call it the speculation podcast. Like, we were trying to speculate what might carry over to Matrix 4, but it was really a discussion and breakdown of the Matrix Online storyline. And I tell you, Starshore was our third, and he was gold, because man, he was much more active than I was, and he was much more involved on the other side, because they actually deputized players to carry the story along. So, and he was part of that deputized group.
Right,
So,
Lisa, you're talking about, correct?
yeah, the live event special interest group. But he had a really good understanding of those parts of the story that I just didn't get my hands on at the time.
Yeah, his memory was like crazy good when it came to storyline stuff. But that's what I'm saying here. I'm really loving that, like you said, that was 2 years ago. And so now the Matrix Online is getting a lot of love since then. A whole lot of love. I haven't, or rather, when I'm thinking about just this whole timeline from the Matrix 4 podcast to now, yeah, I felt that when we started doing that stuff, that there was a spike in Matrix Online references in terms of like blogs and YouTube videos, but now it's just off the rails. Like, I'm loving this. I definitely am here for this party. But yeah, it's always been, like I said, and I'll say it time and time again, like when stuff like that happens, this kind of article comes out, like I always feel like, man, I gave you all the goods, all the stuff he's about to talk about. You got all this here early, team early, first thing in the morning. What I'm looking for now is I'm looking for that the link to the original Matrix 4 podcast. It should definitely be in the description of this live stream, just for anybody who really wants to get into the details of every single storyline plot point, because that, this article doesn't go into, each and every storyline. Like they mentioned Morpheus already, and we'll definitely get into that as this live stream goes on. But yeah, as Vesuvius said, with Starshore, we went over literally everything, every note of a major plot point. So that's out there, and like I said, I'll definitely find that link. I think I found the video that has one, the Matrix Online explained video. Yep, it's in here. So yeah, I'm gonna add this.
It's also available everywhere that podcasts, that you can listen to a podcast. So if you type in the Matrix Online Revisited, it'll come up.
Right, that's what I was just gonna ask you too. How would you search for it? But you're saying on any major podcast platform, if you search for the original Matrix 4 podcast, it will come up, correct?
I would search for the title of the podcast program, which is the Matrix Online Revisited, and then that will come up, as episodes.
Okay, so search for the Matrix Online Revisited. Got it. But like I said, I'm putting the link directly into this live stream's description. So where were we here? So he's talking about the Matrix Online in the article. He says it resurfaced because it offered potentially context about what was going on in the enigmatic Matrix 4 trailer. This is because the Matrix Online occupies a fascinating space within the Matrix universe. Here was a piece of entertainment entrusted by the Matrix creator, the Wachowskis, to continue the Matrix story after the 3 films ended. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in other lives, but I'm trying to get better about just repeating myself in these live streams and stuff, because I always forget that like there's people who haven't been writing with the channel for like the past 2 years, right? So I gotta get in the habit of saying things for newcomers. Welcome anyone who's listening in for the first time. Please make sure you subscribe and like the stream on the way in, so we can touch and reach as many hardcore Matrix fans as we can find in the YouTube Matrix. But yeah, that back to this article. Yeah, that was the major draw for me to play this game and pay the monthly subscription. I wanted to be a part of the next chapter. I wanted to be in the story.
Yeah, that was a brilliant marketing ploy because they basically said that they were going to turn it over to the fans. And in a way, they did. They brought in a writer named Paul Chadwick who has written his Concrete comics. He's done a couple of Matrix comics, which I know you've done reviews on and summaries of. And he's been around the business for a long time. He's an excellent writer, and the players could affect the storyline. And you could go in, and there was no Neo, so it's like everyone was trying to be like the greatest player or the the strongest red pill to kind of fill that void. And I think Rarebit talks about that a little bit in the article below.
All right, so yeah, I'll keep moving, see if we can find that here. So right, he says this wasn't particularly controversial at the time because the Matrix, as far as most people were concerned, maybe even as far as the Wachowskis were concerned, was done. The pressure was off, but it matters now, doesn't it? Because the Matrix is back, and how many of you know what happened after Neo sacrificed himself to the machines? I bet you don't even know Morpheus is dead, do you? Of course, if you were here, you already know about Morpheus and his death in the Matrix Online. But again, if you are new here, you might be learning this for the first time. So there's that. Um, right. He says, don't worry, I'll give you a moment. So yeah, I mean, I guess they're going to talk about it a little bit. We can come back around to that. Um, he says, it's true, Morpheus was alive at the end of the films, but a few months into the Matrix Online, he was killed with the Wachowskis' blessing. What does that mean for the new films? Could this be the reason Morpheus has returned from the dead looking slightly different to before? And could there be something in the game which explains why Neo and Trinity are also back from the dead? He says, I wanted to find out more, and who better to tell me than the person who, by the end of the Matrix Online's operation, was pretty much running the game by himself. He'd create the storylines, implement them, and then bring them to life. Embodying the characters involved in them, he'd play as the agents, wielding fancy dev tools to enhance their abilities. He'd play as named characters from the films like the Merovingian. Remember him? He'd even create powerful new characters of his own, like the opposite. I can never say that name. The
Apothecary.
apothecary. There you go. And a character so deadly she could one-hit people with powerful kill codes. He is our architect, and his name is Ben Chamberlain. I was the last full-time developer on the game. End quote. Right, and that's who this article is about, but also one of the reasons why I want to do this live. Just kind of salute, shout out Rarebit in the Matrix Online Explain video here on this channel, where I kind of go through all the points from that article that was talking about the Matrix Online. I wanted to make some kind of corrections there, clear things up for some people. In fact, I mean, I think a lot of people who are here have seen that video. It's definitely one of the more popular videos on this channel. But yeah, I shouted out Rarebit and Paul Chadwick there too, just as creators of that world. But let's go back here to I wanted to say something real quick here before I forgot about him saying right. He said Morpheus was killed with the Wachowskis' blessing. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick, just in terms of people being curious about whether or not the Matrix Resurrections is going to have the Matrix Online as canon. And it's always kind of been my thought process that in the past, the video games, for the most part, were connected to the films in various different ways. In the case of the Path of Neo, I would say that, it's confirmed non-canon, if you will. But even that has direct references to events that happened in the first film, right?
It does. I I think that was um, their first attempt at being very meta, like self-aware,
Right,
and
right, right, right.
they admitted that it was just a fun thing. They had to change the ending to be conducive to a video game, and I think that concession actually applies to Matrix Online a little bit. They had to make some changes just to make the video game work. So the movie adaptation would be similar but different.
Okay, so speaking of the games here, he says Chamber was a developer. Excuse me, Chamber was at developer Monolith Productions a few years before the Matrix Online came along, and it was a huge deal for the studio. It was by far the biggest project and budget we've had, he tells me, and it was shrouded in secrecy, totally hush hush, as he puts it. That's because this was 2002ish, and back then there was only the one. Excuse me, there was only one, the Matrix film. The final two wouldn't come out until 2003. So okay, so you probably would know this because you're of the beta crew, but I always forget that this actually got started being, or rather, it was put into development. Excuse me, before the sequels were released.
Yes, it was. And I believe the date was 2001 or 2002 that they started developing at Monolith. It might have been something that you shared. Uh, did you
Oh
share an
yeah,
interview? Yeah, and they were talking about like, yeah, so we're trying to make these characters, but we don't know what they look like because they haven't been cast yet. They haven't the set designs haven't been completed yet.
yeah.
And
Well,
I
they
was
did
I
it.
thought that was so interesting. So they basically guesstimated, and then they probably went back and just touched things up, in beta.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. They did a great job with what they had. Obviously, by the time the game comes out, the films were out. But moving on here, he says, but because the Wachowskis were involved with the game and because they wanted it to continue the Matrix story, Monolith had to know what would happen in the new films. This meant they actually had copies of the scripts for them. Imagine that back then, amid all the hype and anticipation. That was a big deal. The scripts for the second and third movies were kept under strict lock and key for eyes only viewing by top people when absolutely necessary, Chamberlain says. It was also meant it also meant the Wachowskis would very occasionally pop into the office, and on one occasion, in a small room alongside a few other people, Chamberlain got to meet them. They were very gracious about it, he says with a smile. As far as I know, he goes on, their involvement was approving the creation of an MMO based on the property to begin story wise after the end of the third movie, and handling off creative responsibilities for the game's story to a hand-picked writer who would be the one to work with the team on an ongoing basis. That handpicked writer was Paul Chadwick, who we already mentioned, creator of the Concrete series of comics, and he was apparently given full creative control over the story. They wanted him, so the PR had it to blow it up, tear it down, rebuild it, or whatever he wanted to make it completely his. And speaking of his Concrete comic, I don't know if this article mentions it. I don't think so, but Paul Chadwick has also done, I believe, 3 total Matrix comics.
Either 3 or 4.
If it's 4, he has the most. If it's 3, he might be tied for most. But then there's like guys who like worked like a little bit on another one. So that's an interesting count. I'd have to go back and check that. But he definitely has at least 3 Matrix online. Excuse me, Matrix comics episodes that he created. Um, right, and the first of which would have been before the original Matrix film was released. I think. Pretty sure.
Was that Let It All?
I don't think that was his first one. I think Miller's Tale was the first one.
With the actual young Morpheus.
Yeah, I believe that was the first one. And if I'm wrong about that, anybody can definitely correct me. But yeah, I think Let It All Fall Down was series 2 or 3. Um, but where did I leave off here? He says, Paul actually did run things by the Wachowskis if it was something that changed an established piece of the fiction in an unexpected way, Chamberlain adds. I found this out years later when he ran something I wanted to do by them, and I had the thrill of seeing their reply to him about a story proposal of mine. They wrote briefly, centered, and in all caps, Hollywood screenplay style. Paul Chadwick did what he was told. He blew up, tore down, and rebuilt, and nothing displayed this better than his audacious plot to kill Morpheus. The story briefly goes that Morpheus wanted Neo's body back after he sacrificed himself to the machines, but the machines, those bolt heads, refused. I don't know. I'm kind of offended by the bolt head term since I was a machine in the game, but we'll deal with that later.
Did you prefer toaster?
See, I don't. Yeah, I think we had some macro rebuttals for the toaster comments, so I was prepared for that. He says Morpheus wasn't happy, and this manifested in the game with him literally running around the city screaming about Neo's body and setting off code bombs. Chamberlain says so. Right, just in case nobody has been in the game, this is what the code bombs look like. These are pictures of code bombs in the Matrix Online. It's one of my favorite animations that we can set off during events, but that's another story. He says, I pick up a bit of snark in Chamberlain's words as he tells me this, like he doesn't approve of how it all went down. And I think it's because he doesn't, not only because he wasn't involved in designing it, but because another team, the Reckless Live Events team, played Morpheus during it. And we mentioned Lee Sig, right?
Yes, we did.
But Lee Sig, this is the live events team. So this is like he's talking about like the actual paid staff members, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so the game had a team that would just play the game as the official movie characters. They were called the Live Events Team. It'll be revealed shortly in the article what happened to them, but they were actually replaced by players like us that were kind of deputized, and they were called the Live Event Special Interest Group. And we would actually, well, not we, those chosen would create different characters so that it wasn't seen as unofficial. They would create new characters that were, I guess, in the crew or in the guild of like the main characters. So they were official.
Right, and that's what it like I said. It goes on to describe. It says this live events team had everything: a nice part of the office, new computers, their own community manager, their own in-game newsletter. They were an expensive. It sounds expensive. They were an expensive, around-the-clock role-play team bought in at launch to prepare. Bought in at launch to paper over a perceived lack of content in the game. That was quite a tongue twister. And they seemed to do what they liked. Hence Morpheus screaming. All while Chamberlain's poorly equipped mission design team cringed in the background. But staffing a large 24-hour team of live game actors must have been expensive, and they were pretty much the first thing to get the chop, says Chamberlain.
Well, that's interesting.
What's that?
It sounds like Mr. Rarebit had some disdain for the live events team. Maybe they weren't taking it seriously.
Well, and I'd love to ask him. I wish this is one of the questions that I asked him before, but yeah, I'd love to ask him about that dynamic because sometimes with like articles like this, I didn't hear the conversation, so I don't know how much is him trying to like pick up on tone and reading in between the lines, or you know what I mean, like Rarebit might not feel any kind of way about them, but. So where were we here? It says, all right, Morpheus's antics caught the attention of the machines, who weren't happy, so they sent an assassin character made of flies, according to Chamberlain, to kill him. Now, there's a correction there, I believe. I don't know that was that really on the machines. Did they hire?
No, they were actually trying to delete the assassin, and he went to the Merovingian. So this assassin was actually he was a robot in the real world, and he was supposed to recycle bodies. And like this character had like a diary that we could access, and he was very good at his job. He got the most nutrients out of the bodies that he would recycle and feed back to the humans. So when he went to recycle Trinity, these other robots had gotten there first, and he wasn't sure what they were doing with her corpse. Um, the, the the running theories are they were either removing something out of her cranial jack, or possibly trying to preserve her and or maybe harvest a fetus that was conceived during that rave scene. So either pregnancy or consciousness. Well, so this robot went to, I guess, the higher ups and to report what these other robots had done since they were cutting in on his job, and they tried to delete the robot and break him down. He wound up fleeing to the Matrix and getting in cahoots with the Merovingian. But he was kind of out for himself a little bit there, and the Merovingian couldn't control him, which is something the Merovingian actually learned from later on in the storyline. And he basically went rogue and tried to destroy the Matrix and killed Morpheus along the way.
Okay, it's funny that you said that because right here it says wasn't it Merv Assassin? So you kind of answered that question already. He was definitely he was inside the Matrix illegally, so he had to go through the Merovingian. But in terms of his actual killing of Morpheus, this was not sanctioned by the Merovingian, is what you're saying?
I believe that part was. He then went rogue and he wanted to further stress the Matrix, which of course the Merovingian couldn't have. That was the Merovingian's home.
Right. So the assassination of Morpheus part did come from the Merovingian.
I believe that did.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like the author here might he might have been a Merv in the game. Maybe Zion, but I'm definitely feeling a bias towards the machines heavy in the subtext here. And good evening, Miss Beverly.
Hey, Beverly's here.
Yeah, I say
Yes,
shout out to Beverly. What were you saying, Vesuvius?
So we did have that cinematic early on where Niobe interrupts the Merovingian and Persephone in bed. It's quite provocative if anybody is interested. So they talked about, like, he basically gave up the assassin, and it didn't take much.
Right. Yeah. But by then it was already. I mean, you know how the Merovingian is. He's definitely looking out for himself, and there was nothing worth protecting at that point. It was going down. Everybody was gunning for him then. Where were we here? Right, because I stopped in the middle. Right. To everyone's surprise, the assassin succeeded in killing Morpheus. That is. There's an infamous video of Morpheus' final moments you can find in this article. It shows Morpheus walking down an alley when all of a sudden the assassin pops out of a window like a whack-a-mole and shoots Morpheus dead. And just like that, one of the most beloved characters was gone. Right. So this is a video here. That's the video that he's referencing. You can watch all the cinematics on this channel as well. He said, it wasn't something I would have done, says Chamberlain, at least not so quickly. Generally, I regarded it as wasteful to kill off major characters unless maybe you've given it a ton of build-up and absolutely milked it for every single drop of drama you could possibly squeeze out of that character. So right, this was, I think, the part when it came up before I said we'd come back around to it because he did mention it. He says much more could have been done with Morpheus. We only had a few characters as well known as him. Heck, we only had so many characters with their own unique character models. However, killing him did start things off with a bang, and it probably got the desired shocked reaction from the players. The story around it, the assassin character made of flies, might have been a little too new and outlandish to imbue the event with the utmost gravitas in the eyes of skeptics, but it's hard to know how much that actually mattered. Let me just finish the thought here. He says, I don't think I ever heard from players that it caused lots of players to quit or anything, although I certainly knew players over the years who really idolized Morpheus and definitely missed him as a presence in the game. I will say that it would, because when it happened, you gotta understand when that live event happened, when the whole assassin and death of Morpheus thing happened in the game. Like I had just got the game. This is like, because what's that, chapter 1.2, 1.3?
That was, I think, right with 1.3.
Right. So if that was 1.3, I probably came in on the game like right when 1.2 came out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I went back, ran the 1.1 missions, 1.2, and then like my first live update is Morpheus dying. Like, it's like, really? I was mad. I was definitely on the fence. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this. I don't know where this is going. But
Well, I
yeah.
tell you, the article says that
Go ahead.
the article says that it shocked players, and it definitely shocked me. As a matter of fact, they leaked that in beta. They leaked that cinematic, and I knew it was coming during live,
Oh
and
wow,
I still didn't believe that it was actually going to happen.
that they did it. Like
I
you
was
thought,
like, no, I was like, they'll change it. This has got to be.
they were like trolling, like Rick rolling you in
And
beta.
see, they used. I thought that like the cinematics were within the game engine, so it's like they were. It's like these characters were being controlled by players, and it would be filmed and edited, or recorded and edited. So I thought that that was just, I don't know, just like something fun that they did, and they released it. Now I found out, but geez, just about 2 years ago, because I talked with somebody that worked on the game by the name of Ether, one of the developers, and he said that they mistakenly leaked that during beta, and I still didn't believe it when the game was live.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like I was not happy when it happened. I mean, I was more than shocked. I was upset. But in fairness to Paul Chadwick, I didn't like it. Didn't ruin the experience for me at all. I was definitely, like he said, he was one of the idolized characters. He was a fan favorite. Um, but I guess in real time, it definitely felt like a shock value move. Um, but it did shake things up. It's not that it didn't have the desired effect, I suppose, is what Rarebit saying here in this article. Kavion Davis asked, "Is the assassin and exile program?" Yes, technically, by fleeing to the Matrix, he wasn't supposed to be inside there, so that's why he had to go through the Merovingian to be inside the Matrix, and technically he was in exile. Yes. Um, where were we in the article here? Oh, real quick, Eternity is here, says they need to do a Matrix series like they do The Mandalorian. I totally agree, which is why I've been working on my own fan fiction for this channel to show everybody that that point is true, that this can be done, that universe can be played in, the Matrix universe can and should be played in that kind of way, and that it's wide open for that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of you. So where were we in this article here? Right. Chamberlain would actually go on to bring Morpheus back as a confused AI simulacra pieced together from his surviving digital impressions. That's like a great way to articulate that concept. Like that sentence is it right there. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to go over this article. Let me just finish this paragraph here. It says, so he did manage to get a bit of drama from him in the end. I don't remember if I ever heard anything from Paul Chadwick about what the Wachowskis might have thought about it, he adds. Paul is on Twitter. You could try asking him about it. So yeah. Back to this, a confused AI simulacra pieced together from his surviving digital impressions. Did you want to share any thoughts before I jump on into this?
Yeah, it was actually propaganda. There was another villain who was just making waves between the three organizations, which were Zion, the Machines, and the Merovingian side. And this character known as the General would just wreak havoc within each organization and blame the other. So it was actually a good like a fourth party to just stir things up between and like rattle the truce between the humans and the machines. So this general, in order to get Zion to break the truce and attack the machines, coded this Morpheus simulacrum and made it look like he was broadcasting from another ship in the real world, saying that he found Neo's body. And we thought that it was real. It was a pretty darn good storyline. We thought like, oh hey, now we have Morpheus back, and now he knows what's going to happen. He knows what happened with Neo's body, so we'll get some closure on that end too, whether he's alive or not. And it turned out to be just a big old ruse.
Now, I was excited, when he popped up, in the game in real time. But back to this statement here, the quote of Rarebit saying a confused AI simulacra pieced together from his surviving digital impressions. So this whole time, when they've been talking about Yahya Abdul-Mateen II playing a quote unquote young Morpheus or character related to Morpheus or Morpheus like character, however it's been worded in these articles, this whole time I've been saying, okay, the way they're going to justify this is AI simulacra, and Rarebit is the reason why. His storyline, I believe, for Morpheus is going to be, at the very least, a point of inspiration for the Morpheus or Yahya Abdul-Mateen character that we're going to see in the Matrix 4, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that statement right there is probably the biggest nugget for me in this article, just because it so accurately articulates what I think happened in the game and is going to translate into the big screen.
Yeah, bravo, Rarebit.
This comment says, what happened to Morpheus's actual body? Do you have an answer on that?
What is it?
He says, what happened to Morpheus's actual body?
Okay, yeah. So as it goes, it was not ever found. Now, this is one of those things. I don't know if it's lost in the weeds here. You've got to make some concessions because this is a video game and it has to make sense and be playable as a video game. So if it was a movie, you would just have another ship go find his ship and recover the body, or at least find a destroyed ship. But they didn't address that in the video game. So I don't know if it's okay, it was disappeared and it was never found, or if it was just a dropped story point because it's not something that they could produce anyway. So that's actually it's a loose end, and it's a good question.
Yeah, that's why I definitely deferred to you. I definitely feel as though it's a loose end, for sure. This Empty Arcade says they had a funeral for him, but the funeral was inside the Matrix. You're Zion, so you would probably know more about the Morpheus in-game funeral than I wasn't there.
I was not there either, but I knew about it after the fact. One of the things I missed, those live events, they weren't scheduled. They just, what these live event team members would do is just go into the game and just start shit up. And if you were there, then you got to participate. That one I did not attend, but I've heard about it, and there's lots of screenshots. Actually, there's not lots, but there's a couple. And yes, it was in the Matrix. It was in one of the churches inside the Matrix. And his body just turned to flies and flew off. That's basically what happened.
Yeah, that's what Empty Arcade backing you up here. He said, didn't it break into flies at the end? He says he made a signature for it. His body was there. Yeah, you have to share that. You have to share that. Do you have that image already in your archives, Vesuvius?
I do. I'll share it on my Instagram story right now. We'll check it later because it'll be up for like 24 hours. And I shared a picture of the apothecary as well on my Instagram story.
The
Yeah,
apothecary.
yeah, I'll share that Morpheus's funeral here in a few. Now, I think that according to a leak, and I don't know if we want to get into leaks right now, Morpheus's body is addressed.
Interesting. I mean, I was hoping that since they're doing this and having another actor play him, that there'd be at least a one-liner, new shell. There, you know what I mean? I, for a lack of a better phrase, hoped that it would be addressed. I did not expect it, but I thought there was a good chance.
Okay, I
Now,
read another leak today,
yeah.
and all I'll say is that they do address it in one line. As far as what I read, and I take it for a grain of salt.
Right, when it
But
comes to like actual dialogue leaks, yeah. No, but I mean, so right to both sides of that point, I guess that, but I'm just taking a shot in the dark. So, if someone's, making a leak up, so to speak, it's not crazy to think that that's not real just because it's kind of obvious. I suppose if I guess that, right? Um, yeah, no, in one of the comments, I don't remember which video it was, but somebody asked something about I think it was probably that Matrix Online Explained video. Where somebody asked, did they cut or did they kill Lawrence Fishburne's character or Morpheus' character in the Matrix Online because they wouldn't have to pay him for the voiceovers anymore? Like it was like a budget thing. What I will say to that is anytime I've seen Rarebit address it, I've never heard that mentioned or anything kind of like that. What I was going to ask you, Vesuvius, because I haven't listened to that. Remember that SEO Block Party Paul Chadwick interview on your channel?
yes,
I probably haven't listened to that for years, but did he mention anything about the death of Morpheus in that interview?
he did.
Do you
He
remember
left
his
it.
take on it?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Just about a few months ago, I cut it up a little bit and put that on my Instagram as well. But yeah, he did. He made like a joke out of it, um, and but then he got serious and he left it wide open. Now, as far as the voiceover thing, that might be a rumor that started through that podcast episode I did with Aether, because he mentioned something about that. And it's been a while since I've gone back and listened to that, but he did mention something about that, and that is also on that podcast stream. That if anybody, it's like the very first episode. I did it, geez, probably about 2.5 years ago, and yeah, he talked a little bit about it. So go have a listen.
Yeah, no, that's it's crazy to think, like I said, 2 years ago we were putting a lot of this stuff together, and how many different like people who played the game we've run into since, and just living in this space, the bottom of the rabbit hole specifically, just kind of surrounding yourself with Matrix universe media. Um, yeah, it's been quite a ride these past 2 years. Let's jump back into the article real quick here. He says Morpheus died. Then the big question is, was it canon? Is it canon? That's what this whole thing hinges on. But isn't that why the Wachowskis were involved in the first place, to make this canon? Isn't that why they handpicked a writer to oversee it? It has to be canon. It has to be. But it might not be. Canon isn't actually something that got talked about at all, Chamberlain tells me. It was just pretty clear to everyone that the movies were canon. And the Wachowskis' written animatrix shorts, we saw preliminary animatic versions of them, were canon. And I guess technically, the Wachowski directed extra scenes filmed for the Enter the Matrix were canon. But that game didn't come out until 2003, and the scenes weren't screened for us, so most of the team wasn't particularly aware of them. Rarebit goes on to say, I don't think we ever worried about whether our game was canon. I don't think anyone who worked on it ever thought that anything we were doing would be regarded as canonical in the same way that the movies were. that would have just seemed pretty absurd. It was clearly a different thing with different authors, a different audience, purpose, mechanics, everything. So real quick, I want to stop because I think what's interesting about like his perspective on it. Let me try to give a timeline perspective on it. You got to go back to 2005, right? So it's been 2 years since the last movie came out. You got Path of Neo that's gonna come out, but as a player, as a fan, because the trilogy provided closure, because you thought it was over, and you weren't. At least I wasn't expecting another movie. I thought that was all we were gonna get. So the idea of the game being canon didn't seem crazy, because if you don't think they're going to make any more movies, well, yeah, we're all that's left. So
Yeah,
I
it
just think,
sounds like
yeah, you go ahead. What were you going to say, Vesuvius?
it sounds like when Rarebit said, we never thought of our game as being canon. It seems like he wasn't trying to write conservatively for the future. Like, well, I don't want to do anything too rash because what if they want to make another movie? He just did his job and wrote, and it sounds like he just lived in the moment and created the best that he could.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say was that like for example with Beyond the Glitch, like I specifically approached it in a way that I wanted the story to be able to fit within the existing Matrix universe without retconning anything or making too many waves. I wouldn't say that it's cautious, but there's not like in there's no death of Morpheus scene in it, right? The flip side is though, because at the time of the Matrix Online, there was no pressure or sight of a new movie coming. Our role play in the game, or even you were talking about the Lee characters and stuff like that. Like, I guess what I'm saying is there wasn't like this strictness of the idea of canon, because again, we thought, or at least I felt like this was the last stop. This was the last playground. This was the last place for Matrix storyline to exist really on a shared level, outside of someone, putting their own fan art on YouTube or something like that. But you get what I mean in terms of sharing it with other Matrix fans in real time, and having that imagination and being able to bring your own creativity to this world. I thought that, again, obviously it's your fan fiction, it's your headcanon, it's not official, it's not Wachowski approved, but as a selling point to play the game, nobody was like, he's like what he's talking about as a developer, nobody was thinking, oh well, in 16 years there's going to be a movie and none of my storyline works anymore. Like, just nobody had that idea at the time. At least I don't think, I wasn't thinking about another Matrix movie at that time anyway.
No, just playing and doing what you do and just trying to come up with something cool. See, if you came up with a story and it contradicted something that was in the movies, then you were just bad at coming up with stories. So
Right,
everyone
right,
just everyone just
right.
tried to come up with something that would like fit. And and then this happened. So
I was about to say, if you were bad at stories, there was just no and then.
yeah, pretty much.
Just
It was like,
moving
yeah,
on.
okay,
Yeah.
no one's gonna show up to your event.
Rarebit goes on to say, no developer had any illusion anything we did would ever be known or taken to heart by the larger public. That's just not the game. That's just not the way game stories were regarded. Yeah, it was a different time. I suppose no one ever expected a Matrix 4 to come along to stir everything back up, did they? Nevertheless, it has, and now the question of what is going on in the Matrix 4 is all anyone seems to talk about. Why, for instance, is Neo in the bath with a rubber duck on his head? I decide to use Chamberlain's almost unrivaled knowledge of the Matrix to try and find out. First, here's what happened since the end of the Matrix Revolutions, the third film, as according to the Matrix So So it says deep breath. After attacks by power-hungry militaristic exile programs led by someone called the General, then super-hacked humans, a Zion officer named Anome, and his unlimited operatives, which Rarebit corrected me. I used to call him Anome, but he said they pronounce it as Anome. And as a shadow war between Zion and machine-aligned sub-organizations, the kid from the movies, leading E Pluribus Neo, and the enigmatic Kryptos, head of the Cypherites, open war between Zion and the machines. The machinists, by the Merovingian and the Oracle, eventually broke out again. But it was interrupted by a new, more powerful group called the Oligarchs, humans who had a certain amount of control over the machines prior to the machine takeover, who let the machines enslave the rest of humanity as long as the oligarchs were left to their own devices. But now, in MXO, they wanted a slice of the action in the Matrix, and what appeared to be Trinity in programmatic form was manifesting in the simulation. And that's where we are today. So Trinity came back in the game as well. That was one of Chamberlain's storylines. He brought her back to try and flesh out the role of the Oracle, who you'll be familiar with from the films. Don't worry about the vase, and to mull on the creation and design of the Matrix itself, and to posit that Neo and Trinity were programs all along, and designs of the Matrix itself. Designed by the Oracle as perfect interfaces between man and machine, making possible the necessary periodic reboots of the intentionally flawed Matrix simulation. Goodness me. Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister there. So before we go on, because this next thing is like your thing, right? Yeah, I like that this article mentions the oligarchs. Right, because this is from Rarebit describing the oligarchs, right?
Yeah, that's a description of the oligarchs I've never heard put that way, and it's almost refreshing.
Right, because I feel like this kind of like clears up that debate, because that's a legit Matrix Online debate, right?
Yeah, it's like, who are the oligarchs? It goes back to like the Animatrix second renaissance. It's like, oh, are they the machine sympathizers? It's like you never know, but it's still a little bit vague, but it gives a core plot point that they had power over the machines.
Well, I'm still, I don't think that he said anything to debunk Team Sympathizer. I definitely think that there's still room for the sympathizers to have become the oligarchs, because they existed prior to the machine takeover, which is referenced here. Now he specified that they had a certain amount of control over the machines, and I think that this was probably a conversation that was on the Discord. I think maybe with 695. Part of that machine sympathizers, I guess, theory, or its nearest relative, is kind of the idea that these might have been descendants of the original programmers of the AI that became the AI that took over. So perhaps they had like some backdoor codes or something of that effect, or perhaps it's just an appreciation for the bloodline of their original creators. But that would also be something that I felt like has room to exist after that statement. But I think that statement is probably the clearest statement we've ever seen about that storyline.
Yeah, I still question, because we saw the heads of all the countries basically bow down to the machines, and the sympathizers are, I don't know, they're not, it doesn't strike me as like they were powerful people. So to me, I would think the oligarchs are like our Jeff Bezos, our royal family, our
see, but that's exactly what I'm saying. I personally don't see anything that says Jeff Bezos couldn't have been a machine sympathizer. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's still not the president, right? He's still not in the UN floor. So he could be rich and powerful and had owned the company that started that first series of AI that became the AI that ended up taking over, and been like, hey man, those are my guys. Like, we out here making money together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to put it in a box when I probably don't have to, but yeah, it's just fun to think about. Especially now, it's like, oh, we got like a little bit more information, so I
Right, just
gotta
that
I gotta go
tiny
run
bit,
with it.
that tiny little bit of intel. We've been waiting 15 years for that. Where did I stop here? Right, because this is your wheelhouse now. The next thing here is Trinity as a biological interface program also fed into my largest overarching theme, which was basically that, human or machine, aren't we all just sentient beings, equally worthy or unworthy, as our own actions may dictate, of life and respect? See, I'm just gonna let that sit for a little bit. That sounded like super deep.
Yeah, it's like it's got some heart. He's got some heart to his storytelling. Always did.
Next, he says, bringing Neo back was a trickier proposition. To put him in the game would have distracted from anything else. He was so clearly the main hero in the films that brought back in any form, Neo would simply be the good guy. And almost everyone would gravitate to him, and we lose much of the complexity of our carefully balanced positions. In the game, you were supposed to be the hero, not him again.
Yeah, you're trying to take his place as a player.
So, in Chamberlain's eyes, a holographic memorial of him tucked away in the Matrix was enough. Now, do you have a what's the name drop on that memorial?
Which memorial is that?
That's what I'm asking. I don't know which memorial he's referencing. This is a memorial for Neo.
Oh yeah, the code. Yeah, there's like a code of like Neo's RSI, but it's in like the green matrix code, and it just kind of floats. And it was in the Westview neighborhood or district in the Gracie neighborhood in like a Fight Club basement. So when Morpheus would go around and like rile up the Zionites to follow him and get Neo's body back, he would tell them like, all right, we have to collect his fragments of his RSI. So they would all go out and beat up these enemies and collect these pieces of his RSI, and then he like put them together, and Neo would appear over Morpheus's head. And of course, everyone like this is the first couple of months of the game. Everyone thinks like, oh, we're getting Neo back, and we never did. But so they took that model of his body in green code form, and they put it in like a little memorial. And it was funny because you could see it clearly enough that it didn't have eyes, and it had a heartbeat. There was like a sound effect that you could hear a heartbeat. So it was a little eerie. But I remember somebody pointing that out. Frack pointed that out, and he's like, "Yeah, Neo's alive. We're gonna get him back."
Yeah, we'll have to dig up some screenshots of that. Speaking of screenshots, the thumbnail for this live stream is actually from Rarebit's thumbnail collection. I thought it'd be a nice little nod to use one of his images there. So yeah, creds on the photo creds on the thumbnail. Thank you, Rarebit, for sharing that with us. Where were we here? Oh right, we were talking about the Neo Memorial. So it says some interesting ideas. No, I wonder if any will manifest in the Matrix 4 in some way. Will writer and director Lana Wachowski have noted any of the games going on? It's an exciting prospect, isn't it? I mean, at this point, I think we can confirm that, like I said, at the very least, there is some inspiration from the Matrix Online. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's definitely some visual stuff that I can pick up on. It'd be nice if they referenced a plot point or a character, but I've said before, if we just get somebody with like glowing green eyes, I'll be happy. And we got that. It's like the first clip in the trailer, so I'm happy with that.
The Matrix gods have been listening to you. It says Chamberlain, however, is as in the dark as the rest of us. He watched the Matrix 4 trailer like everyone else, puzzling over what it might mean. I was surprised that it was pretty much a replication of the first movie, he says, but I have to guess that that's just what they want us to think for now. And there's going to be a major twist or two in there that will turn everything on in its head in a different way. I think we talked about this. Was it in the live? Or it might have been like the pre-show or something, but remember somebody posted that thing? Was it viewer or non? Somebody said everything in the trailer was in like the first hour of the movie.
Yes. Yeah, and I like the way that Rarebit mentioned that. It's like, all right, thank you. It's like this is not the entire movie. This is just what they want us to see right now.
Yeah. So exciting. It is a very exciting time. Where do we stop here? It says the players threw me a going away party in the game, which is incredibly touching. Right, I think he says that later. It says, quote, it will probably involve the explanation for just how the Matrix got apparently reset or whatever. Because at the end of the third movie, Neo and Trinity were supposedly dead, and humans who wanted to be freed from the Matrix were supposedly going to be freed by the machines and not attacked by them in the real world. That was the deal Neo had struck with the architect. From what we see in this first Matrix 4 trailer, that all seems to have been wiped out. With a time jump to since Neo and Trinity are older, so who knows? What were you going to say?
There's actually a tweet by the official Matrix, I think Twitter, that said something about a construct or a Matrix just for the one. And that's interesting. I mean, that's probably a rabbit hole we can jump down as well. But it kind of pertains to what Rarebit says here about either the reload or the new version.
Yeah, I noticed he said reset or whatever, which, you know, when I read it the first time, it cracked a little smirk. You know, I like to point out that the franchise on several occasions uses the word reconfiguration. But I feel like, especially when it comes to talking about the choice at the end of Reloaded and the way that the end of the trilogy in Revolutions plays out, I think they're very careful about not using the word reset. But that's another conversation. Chamberlain would go on to work on The Matrix Online until 2009. Paul Chadwick's plot lines all wrapped up in March 2007, and after that, Chamberlain was the sole remaining designer. And yeah, I think we've definitely talked about this before, but like I kind of feel like when they say Chadwick's plot lines all wrapped up in March 2007, I mean, I guess technically the Return of Trinity was the very end. So that would be a Rarebit Matrix Online reference potentially in the Matrix Resurrections, depending on how they justify it, right? But I'm thinking that, like, I still think that there's more likely going to be references from the Chadwick side than the Rarebit side, but we will see.
Oh, it's funny. It's funny you say that.
Why is that funny? I'm not that funny of a person.
I see you wrote that. I did a breakdown of what I think is okay. So I believe everything is canon, but I break things down into like tiers, and one of them, like how you mentioned, like, oh, he probably pulled from Chadwick before he would, or I guess Lana would probably pull from Chadwick before she would pull from Rarebit. So I actually have Rarebit lower on the tier list, even though I still believe it to be canon. It's like I got to rank these things. I got to differentiate these things, and if I'm going to differentiate them, I'm going to rank them. So I don't know. Maybe we can get into that a little bit later. But one thing that he mentions is that Chadwick's storylines wrapped up by, what was it, 7.1?
That sounds about right.
That was 2 years into the game, so they probably had Mr. Chadwick on a 2-year contract. But I believe his outlines carried over until Chapter 9. And I would defer to Rarebit, but I think that happened because I went and looked this up recently, and I think yesterday, I looked at, I think it was March 2007. There was a community uplink, and it said that they did voice voiceover recording through Chapter 9, and that
Okay.
was done in March 2007.
Yeah.
So and that took us pretty far into the game, and Chapter 9 was full-fledged oligarchs.
Right. So I mean, the timeline that you're kind of talking about, it's almost like a track and field handoff, like passing the baton, like that story had to kind of get finished, right?
Yeah, and Chapter 9 still had the Paul Chadwick cinematics. So that's why in my outline I credited Chadwick with up to Chapter 9.
Mm.
So there's a little gray area here in my understanding. If Rarebit says that his storyline's wrapped up in March 2007, which was 7.1, then I have a gray area with with my understanding of this. So I would obviously defer to him, but my outline has Chadwick up to Chapter 9.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, no, I mean,
I'm it'll
I
come
think
out.
it's yeah, no, I think it's fair. Um, but yeah, no, let's go on to the next Rarebit quote here. He said, "I had some forewarning that a shutdown was impending, but until I
Ugh.
was told the final date, I was able to sort of pretend it wasn't real and just keep working away." He says, "I thought I'd be able to keep going up until the actual shutdown, but once I was told the date, the Matrix Online shut down at the end of July 2009. I found that whatever inspiration had kept me going all that time vanished, and I had to give notice." He said, "Yeah, the players threw me a going away party in the game, which was incredibly touching, and I still get a bit misty thinking about it. They led me on some merry chases in that simulation," he adds with a smile. Um, yeah, I can imagine at that point, in the end there, when he's talking about just chopping wood and keeping going, I'm sure he was so busy, he probably didn't have time to stop and think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like he was literally the only developer keeping that game running. Story, everything.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, especially you got a player base, and not everybody was kind. But I always thought that he handled things well and addressed things well, and I have the utmost respect for Mr. Chamberlain for the work because I enjoyed that game so much. So without him, we would have lost that game years ahead of that.
Oh, is it time? Is it time for my Area K story now? Is that
Oh, it's always time for an Area K story.
well? Because you're talking about how he handled everybody. I mean, so in fairness, you're talking 2009, so that's what 12 years ago. Um, my online etiquette is far more mature now than it was then. Um, for the record, I don't think I was one of the mean spirited people you were referring to a few moments ago, though. I wouldn't consider myself that, but I might not have been the most polite client at times, but at the same time, the Area K story for me, this is like one of the greatest like customer service moments ever, right? So, because the Matrix Online, we still had to pay a subscription; it wasn't a free game, and I don't remember where on the forum was there like a suggestion box thread or something like that.
There was. It was called Developmental Roundtable.
The round table. See, this is why I rock with you because you remember these tiny, tiny details that my old brain does not hold. But yeah. So somewhere in the round table, I had mentioned because I was a gunman, I was a proud sniper. Dropping low levels at Mario Central was one of my favorite things to do, and I still miss it. Uh, but yeah, I felt like there was a lot of drops for other trees, level 50 stuff, and I was like, can we get something for the gunmen? I feel like the gunmen aren't getting a lot of love here. Like, we got to work real hard. And not very long after that, there was the Area K trench coat, which had gunman buffs. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. Um, but I wore it with pride. You had to beat the Taskmaster in 0-1 construct in order to get it, in order to get that drop. So the fact that we had to go to a machine space to get it, I thought was a nod, which was really cool. Again, all this could be in my imagination. I did ask Rarebit about this once though. So he said it is definitely possible. It was a long time ago, so he doesn't remember for sure. But I'm gonna go ahead and assume that that's good enough. That I chalk that as my contribution to the Matrix Online community is the Area K trench coat, because I definitely asked and received, and I'm very grateful for that experience. It's one of my favorite gaming experiences. So when you see my character in screenshots posted on social media, on Instagram or Twitter, that black trench coat is the trench coat I'm talking about. It's definitely in a lot of the video. In fact, I'm probably wearing it in every video in the game on this channel because I loved it that much.
Yeah, and the Area K was a cool nod for the Animatrix, and we talked earlier that
Right.
they were
It's got the
developing.
Animatrix reference. Yeah, the 0-1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were developing the game as like before the Animatrix was out, so you can tell about Area K in 0-1, but it was impressive to see the detail in the game that we saw in the Animatrix.
Yeah, no, that's a great detail. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe new joining us and didn't watch the series of videos I did about the Animatrix episodes with all the like little Easter eggs and extra stuff, in the second Renaissance, there is a news reel, and they're talking about different things that 0-1's doing, and on one of the news channels, it says that like I guess the harbor, like where they would ship the products from, was called Area K. So that ended up being the name for this trench coat that was found in the 0-1 construct in the Matrix Online. So that was a very cool nod and link. And I see Kavion Davis asks, any news for making the Animatrix season 2? I haven't heard anything official, but that nod from the Animatrix that is in that jacket in the Matrix Online, those are the kind of references that I tried to make in Beyond the Glitch in the fan fiction, and I think you guys are gonna really enjoy that like flavor to it. I'm really curious to see like what you guys pick up on and find like little stuff like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. But let's get through because we're almost at the end of this article here. Where did we leave off? I think he said right, he had to give notice. So the players threw him the going away party. After that, he found a passion for drawing, and together with his ability to write, it culminated in the creation of the Supermassive Black Hole A-Star webcomic, which you can support through Patreon. I can't say I miss it, he says as our chat comes to an end. Before we go into that, just about Supermassive Black Hole, definitely want to shout out Rarebit as a content creator, doing his own thing with his own web series. I know it's a lot of work for him, but I'm always liking his posts and of the images. He like shares some of the paintings that he does for the comic series, promotional. But yeah, it's always like to see it is always inspiring for me, because whenever I see his work, like it takes me back to those very end cinematics. And I know like when people watch the the compilation video on my channel of all the cinematics just back to back, when you get to the end there, you can see the budget drop off, and like it goes from color to black and white, and then no sound and whatever. So at that point, Rarebit was just doing it by himself. It was a one-man show on everything. So yeah, it just kind of takes me back to those cinematics, and because at the time we had to wait so long to get them too. So like, even though the quality might not have been as good, at least I know I was just happy to see something. I'm like, okay, it's not over yet. They haven't pulled the plug on us yet, right?
Yeah, and there was a drop in the cinematics. I think we got up to 9.3, and then we didn't get any cinematics for all of Chapter 10. And then I think he gave us cinematic 11.3 and 12.1, and then that was the end of the story.
Yeah, he says here, so yeah, once it was wrapped, the story ended. He says, I can't say I miss it. He says, as our chat comes to an end, because there were lots of things that were out of my control and far from ideal. And it was a brutal amount of work. I can only imagine. But it's fun to reminisce about the good times, he says. And I encourage you to do the same if you ever spent any time with the game. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. That said, for those of you with PC, I mean, there's a way to do it with Mac. I don't know those type of El Capitan kind of conversations, but the emulator is fully okay, not fully. The emulator is functional, and if you're just curious to explore, that is an option for you. Yeah, it's I think probably more impactful and nostalgic for those who played the game, but just if you just want to see what it looked like. Now, that's what I was going to ask you. Would we be able to find that Neo hologram or that Neo memorial in the emulator?
I don't recall if it's there, but it would be in the Gracie Heights Fight Club, which you can find on the map.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's there at the moment. I think it is, but
Okay.
if not, there is a way to like generate it.
Well, yeah, if anybody from the emulator finds it or can get a screenshot to us, definitely share. It would be appreciated if you can find that. Take a little snapshot for us. Yeah, I think this is the last paragraph here. It says, will any trace of the Matrix Online be visible in the Matrix 4? We will have to wait and see, but for now and forevermore, it remains a reminder of the heady crossover ambition we sometimes see in games. And though these projects might not work out, they remain remnants of an industry which pushes boundaries, and the memory of them lives on in the minds of those who touch them. That would be us. So Ben Chamberlain and the Matrix Online, I salute you. We salute you too. You made games a bit more interesting, and for that, we all thank you. So yeah, I definitely like the tone of how this article kind of shouted out how much Rarebit put into everything, and shout out to Lionel Wachowski for referencing back to the Matrix Online, even if it's only subtle, even if it's only through inspiration and not direct storyline references. I think it's cool. I think and that's what I said to Rarebit, on Twitter, like, this is long overdue and well deserved. In terms of the praise, all the praise that these guys are going to get, I think more is coming. In fact, I can assure you that more Matrix Online references are going to be made in the next few weeks. Little birdie told me something. There's definitely going to be an upcoming video that's going to shine even more light on this subject matter. So yeah, all that's happening, and like I said, shout out to Rarebit and Chadwick and all those guys who built that world for us to play in. And like I said, it's long overdue. I think they were way ahead of their time, and it's cool to see something that we put so much time into playing as consumers. Finally get some shine, finally get some love. I mean, we actually know how much clothes cost in the Matrix.
Yes, we do. 4,200
Info, baby.
info bucks.
You say you got to convert that.
About 12.50.
That's the end of the article. Is there any other news that's kind of been Matrix related over this past week since the last live stream that we wanted to cover or discuss?
I don't think so. There is that one tweet, but that might have actually been before. A Matrix for the One.
Can you send it to me?
Sure.
While you're doing that, I'm going to see if I can find. Yeah, it's in here somewhere. Oh, but that's going to be the. That might work. Okay, so if you look on the screen here, right, we got the new bunny. We
Oh
updated
yeah,
we updated the bunny.
it looks cool.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Far too kind. Yeah, the original logo was inspired by Dior's bunny tattoo in the first Matrix film. I told the artist to try to emulate that rabbit from the tattoo in the original Matrix film, and came up with the silhouette concept, and the artist drew it out and everything. But when I saw Jessica Henwick with a different bunny tattoo, I thought, you know what, it might be time for a change. So I tried it. You guys seem to like it, so I think I tried it on the thumbnail tonight. I put it on the thumbnail to see what it looked like on the thumbnail, and it's definitely growing on me. I definitely really like it. Did you? I think I see. Okay, this is the twit the HBO Max tweet.
Yeah, and they responded.
See if I can get this on the screen here, so everyone can see. And yeah, if you're just now joining us, please definitely make sure you like the stream. We want to share this with as many hardcore Matrix fans as we can find in the YouTube Matrix. Okay. Yes. Oh, can I zoom in? That's kind of small. Okay. So, all right, explain what's happening here. You have HBO Max tweets. It's too late. Your eyes are already open. The Matrix Resurrections is in theaters and on HBO Max December 22nd. And it's got the screenshot of Neil Patrick Harris, and it says, "Can you tell me what happened?"
Yeah, I
And
think
then,
that's just the whole full trailer. 'Cause
and
that
you're
was day
saying,
of.
I'm sorry.
So this was tweeted out by HBO Max the day of the trailer release, the official release, and then the official Matrix Twitter at the Matrix movie, entitled "The Matrix Resurrections," uh, replied to them, "A new world built for one," and the one is capitalized.
Right, because you're saying that the Matrix Resurrections is the specific, like, official Twitter for the movie.
That is, it's got the blue check mark.
All right. Is there anything else that you're working on this week?
Putting together a couple of cool Instagram posts. So we mentioned Neo's RSI fragments. So my next Instagram post, probably in the morning, will be Neo's final thoughts, all of his final thoughts. And aside from that, working on a little a fan story, a fan fiction story
Nice,
that
nice.
will be actually voiced over by my daughter. So
Aw.
editing that, and
So
she did a pretty good job.
when you say voiced over, like, what medium is your fan fiction coming out on?
I suppose it will be audiobook, but
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah. No, I like that.
it's
Like,
just a short story.
yeah, but that's a space like the niche of the niche. Like, I definitely, yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah. It's unique. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. No, that sounds really exciting. I hope you're having fun doing it. Yeah, and make sure you're following Vesuvius on Instagram and Twitter. It's at VesuviusMXO. Yeah, people ask me, they're like, "Yo, what's your Twitter?" At Neomatrixology, same way it's spelled on the logo and on the channel, on Instagram and Twitter. So make sure you're following us there. I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into the editing room for Beyond the Glitch to keep that on schedule. But there's been some good news and things developing there. But like I said, this next couple weeks, I'm definitely giving you guys the heads up that the Matrix Online references are going to turn up a notch, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's like I said, it's just a very exciting time to quote Tank. It's the hype train is going full steam. It's a bullet train. We're on magnets right now. Um, but yeah, I think that's it for tonight. And make sure you like the stream on the way out if you haven't already. And class is dismissed.